Hi everyone, welcome. We've just gone 4 p.m. here in the UK. We've got a few more attendees even rolling in, so I'll buy some time by doing a bit of an extended intro. Today is very much a double act in terms of our webinar. I'm joined by Matt Lineker, Customer Success Manager at Totara Learning. Hi Matt.
Starts on mute. Hi, Meredith.
So Matt and I today are together going to present the session on setting up virtual training sessions within Totara Learn. Matt has a vast experience in terms of running both face-to-face and virtual events. You'll see his name pop up on a lot of things that you'll receive, such as the community update. So we'll be today's presentation will be a mix of slides and live demo on my local site. I'll be the controller of the slides today, just because I'll be flicking between my demo site. But Matt will be doing probably most of the speaking if I'm in luck. Excuse me, a reminder today that our session is being recorded. Let me just close the chat down so I can skip my slides. There we are. So it is being recorded. You can access this recording in the community probably tomorrow or the next day if you've missed anything, or if you want to share with one of your colleagues. In between, as each Matt and I speak, the other one will be maintaining the chat and making sure that we're answering any questions that you might have or directing any questions to the speaker. So I encourage you to open the chat and get stuck in and ask any questions as we go. Anything to add, Matt?
No, that's fine. We should be covering how to set up training events in Totara Learn, and also we'll be looking at just some ways to engage learners whilst they're in a virtual training event. That's what we'll be looking at today.
Excellent. Now today's session shouldn't be any more than 40 minutes, 30 minutes if everything's going well, 20 minutes if we rush through it, I would say. We'll see how we go. But thank you so much for joining us, and let's get started. So you'd be pleased to know, start with me. So when thinking about managing virtual events within Totara Learn, the seminar tool, the seminar activity is usually the natural place that you think of to start. And while the live training event will primarily be managed through an external system like Adobe Connect, Zoom, MS Teams, etc., the seminar tool can be used to track, of course, booking, attendance, grades, and can be connected as opposed to fully interfaced with web conferencing software. Now, to do that, there's a little bit of a trick. Now, and this is where I, hopefully not too clumsily, swap the slides for my live site. So bear with. That wasn't too bad at all, really, was it? So this here that you hopefully are seeing, can you confirm that you're seeing my local site, please, Matt?
Yep, it looks beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. This is my local demo site. Those of you who have joined any of my webinars know the sphere, this is just my local site running on my little laptop. There's no theme. Everything you see here is just me configuring and uploading open source or free open stock photos. You can't get me for copyright on this site. And there's no plugins. This is all out of the box version 12. So this is everything you can do, and I'm showing you can do on your version 12 site. So I was talking about connecting web conferencing software, and we do this through the seminar administration settings. So logged in as an administrator right now, head over to seminars, and there's a section here called custom fields. If you go into custom fields, there's a series of elements or forms here where you can add custom fields, excuse me, which is custom information that you can attach to each of these elements or forms. And the one that I want to talk about is using the URL custom field within the event element or the event form. Now I've already created one I've prepared early, so I'll show you what that looks like. But otherwise you would just go and create a new custom field and select URL. The settings in editing are the same as creating, so this will just speed things up a little bit. So we give this custom field a name, which will display on that event form, and a short name, which I want to remember. So I'm going to copy that to my clipboard. And I'll come back to why that short name is important. Now, skipping some of these fields, which I'll come back to in a second, here we can have the default text, which will display, and I'll show you what this all looks like in a seminar in just a moment. But it means that you can have a default link, probably not applicable when you're talking about a unique web conferencing room that you might set up to run a particular virtual event. So you can leave that blank, and you can have your default text here directing the creator of the event to enter in the relevant details. A couple of other options. One of them is around exporting that link into any reports or report exports, and whether that link opens in a new window, which is it's a really good idea to do that, particularly with web conferencing software. Now, I wanted to come back to this section here. You can, if you like, hide this field on the event setting page. So when an individual views the seminar event, they don't see that Zoom link or that Connect link before they've actually booked. You can share that link in a different way, which again, I'm going to go through, but you may choose to optionally hide that in case it's important that only people that have booked on a session see that link. In this case, no one can actually access my site, so I don't care. Now, while we're on these custom fields, another area that you can utilize here to perhaps set expectations for the event or for the process of having a virtual event is the sign up element. Now, by default, there's a custom field which is requests for session organizer. You can change the name of that. That's just available out of the box. But you might want to add a field. And again, you've got a range of different areas, which might be maybe a text area for some more in-depth information. It might be helpful to create a field so attendees can provide some more information about maybe their expectations for the session, or maybe any specific requirements they might have, bearing in mind that virtual events aren't always particularly easy people with accessibility issues. So for someone who's visually or hearing impaired, you might need to make some allowances, maybe send through the slides in advance, provide a script as you go through. And this can be a great way of collecting that information in advance of the session during the process of sign up. Now, the other thing you can do here is create a virtual room. Now, this is very much an optional idea. I was just playing around with that yesterday, and I thought maybe I'll add it to this session. And what you can do is, rather than a physical room, you can create the idea of a room or a virtual room based on maybe the different types of web conferencing software that your organization runs, and maybe even the subscription level that you have to that. So it may be that events can't have any more than 100 people, and that might be valuable information to show when people are booking so they know to get stuck in early, a bit like this webinar series where we have a capacity of 100. First in, very much first served. So that's completely optional, but it can give that extra element of information. And if you go into that room, maybe within the description, you could provide a link to how to download that particular piece of functionality, that web conferencing tool that you so wish, and maybe some information like the minimum requirements they have to use that particular web conferencing software. Now, while I'm jumping over to the course, Matt, is there anything in that chat for me?
No one's asked any questions so far, but if you do have any questions today, feel free to put them in the chat here or ask in the Q&A section, and we'll be able to answer those as we go.
Okay, so I have a course which I have set up previously. And this is set up to kind of mirror what we're going to talk about, or what I'm going to talk about today. I'm very much the practical in the theory and practice of this webinar. So within a course, there are some virtual training ideas that I just want to go through today. And one of them is including additional event information when you create that seminar event. So just ignoring everything else on screen, I will go through it. I want to focus on the actual seminar activity that I have created. So when I go into an event, partway down the screen here is this details area. And this can be where you provide information about that web conferencing system or how the virtual event will run and the general requirements of attending this type of event. And these details, along with that shortcut name that I copied and pasted to my clipboard just a moment ago, can be used to add extra information to the notifications and messages that you send to individuals regarding the seminar event. Now, if you go into the notification section of the seminar administration area, and look at the different templates that we've got here, you can actually edit them at a local level. They're set at the system level, so you can go into, if you're a system administrator, you can edit the default templates within the administration settings, but you can change them locally as a trainer or as a site manager or an administrator within a particular course. So if I, for example, go into the seminar booking confirmation notification, you can see that I've got some templated content here for the message to the learner, as well as optionally to the manager as well. And this content is all placeholder based, which means everything here in a square bracket will be replaced with the actual content. So it will be Meredith Henson when I receive this particular notification. Now, you can also include those details in your notification, and those details, as I mentioned, can have a little bit more information about the event, maybe pre-installation or download links or instructions if the users are using your web conferencing functionality for the first time, and maybe a reminder even for them to test their microphone or camera and speakers in advance of the session rather. And this is where you can reuse that short name or the custom field unique ID and provide more information about that, or provide that web link within the text of your session confirmation email. So here I've just edited this, which just says, please use the following link to access your virtual room. And the format is square bracket session, colon, and then that short name that I saved before. Now, if in doubt, the contextual help here just shows you all the different placeholders that are available. And see here under, let's scroll down a little bit more, under event custom fields is what we added here. If you ever forget that format, there it is in the contextual help, and you can just simply replace the words placeholder with the short name or the unique ID of that particular custom field, which means that that URL that I'm going to add to my particular setting or event will be displayed here. So just to see what that looks like, if I go back into my virtual event and into the settings, here at the bottom is what that custom field looks like. So I can have my, let's say Zoom, because we're using Zoom right now, Zoom link. As soon as I entered something that's valid, then I can enter my link or my link text as I need to, and make sure that that in fact opens in a new window. Now, that's kind of me from a practical side of thing in terms of the seminar setup. I'm going to, hopefully, again, not too clumsily, switch back to the presentation and hand over to Matt for a bit.
Just some questions there, Meredith.
Oh, yeah.
Anne's asking, can team live events be used instead of Zoom?
Whatever conferencing system you like, that will apply as long as there's a unique URL to access a particular room.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Another question from an anonymous attendee. Are virtual classes available in version 11? So are seminars available in 11?
Yes, they are. And you can do the same thing in version 11.
Another question. Is there a reason why it's preferable to open teleconferencing in a new window?
Well, yes. And part of that, well, there's two reasons. One of them we're going to go through today, which is you can leverage a lot of other functionality available in Totara Learn during and directly after your virtual event. And two, it's just good practice that you don't navigate the user away from your system, so that once perhaps the session is done, they don't have to try to scramble to get back to your site or just get distracted and head over to Facebook instead. Just keeps them there and your learning page or your content page readily accessible to them.
So the question from Jill. Jill says she set up a seminar activity as a single activity. Then when learners go to the seminar and click view course, they don't see anything. What should I have done differently so they could see something when this button is pressed?
I would change the single activity course format is designed to immediately launch the one activity that it contains. So your users won't see the kind of course landing page as a result. So if you just change the course format in your course administration settings to something like topics layout, like what you saw on my screen just a moment ago, then you can add that filler text in that landing page. There is one downside that they need one more click to access the seminar, but one more click isn't probably too onerous if you're providing other support material.
Thanks, Meredith. That's all the questions for now.
Okay. Over to you, Mr. Lineker.
Okay, so once you've got your training event set up in your LMS, the next step is really to reflect on how you're going to run it. So one way we can improve learner engagement in a training session is to offer a truly blended learning experience. What do we mean by a blended learning experience, sometimes known as a flipped classroom? Really, we mean we're going to turn the traditional way of delivering training upside down. So traditionally, trainers might be seen as the source of knowledge or experts. In a training session, they deliver information in the form of a presentation. Somewhat ironically, what we're doing in today's session, e.g. delivering a fixed presentation. But we could flip this so that we can add the information we're presenting today directly into the LMS in the form of a short course. We could, for example, record this video and add it to a course page and let learners watch it before coming to a training event. Then in the session, trainers can spend the time setting educational challenges. These challenges can be built in a way that asks learners to demonstrate their understanding on a topic or show what they've learned, new skills from a course they've taken. The goal of a training event then is more performance-based for the learners. The trainer can spend time clarifying any confusions that learners may have. A live training event can become about asking questions, and it can be about learners performing certain skills rather than them just consuming information. So you could add a video or information to a course first, and that would allow learners to have more time to reflect on the topic, then come to a live training event with questions already formed. Back to you, Meredith.
Right, so I was totally engrossed in answering a question. Right. So, in advance of the session, there are some things that you can do to try and support that virtual event. So again, I am going to stop share and flip to my local. All right, we're in my course there, Matt.
Yes, you're in your course there.
Excellent, thank you. So, there we go. So in advance of your session, there are some things that you can do. It's not just all about the seminar activity. There's lots of other things you can do to support it. And you'll see here on my site that I've got some ideas for you. So one of them is around the course page and using labels or topic descriptions like you see here and here on screen to direct learners through their learning. This certainly isn't unique to any virtual type training. It's applicable for completely online learning as well. But it does offer learners some guidance about what they might need to do before they sign in and book and attend a virtual learning event. And what I've done here, which is again what I recommend, is to group pre and post activities within topics. So here we have an introduction, we have kind of the learning group together in the second block, and then in the third and the fourth topic sections, we have sort of the post activities, the knowledge check and assessment, and the post course or post training evaluation forms. Now, one thing that you can also do is prepare in advance a range of resources that might be applicable during or directly after your virtual training session. And one idea is to see here I've got a hidden label. So this is available to me as an administrative user, but I couldn't see this as a learner. And I've got a little note here to make the below document, which is the event notes, visible once the training has started. And that might be so people don't think that they can only look at the look at the notes rather than attend the event, or it might be supporting content for during the virtual event. The other thing that you might want to do is in advance, create a range of featured links. So you could use the featured links block. I've renamed it here for helpful process improvement links. This is the name of the course and the thing that I've gone with. And if I can configure that in advance and then hide it. So this is hidden, and if I then go to show it, and just for clarity's sake, I'll turn editing off, I've got some links here and some images here pre-prepared, and I can simply turn editing on, unhide that featured links block, and now that those links and those resources are available to the learners straight away, or like I say, after the event, the virtual training event has concluded. Now, in advance of the training event, you can also look at these pre-event activities. So maybe using access restrictions. So in this case, here's my seminar event, virtual learning event, and it's not available until these introduction type activities are complete. So you might want people to do maybe a knowledge check to see where individuals are at, so you can pitch your training at the right level. Maybe you'll split off into groups in some way, or whether you want to give people an option about what content you might focus on during the session. You might have them complete a choice or a poll activity. And you may also want to include joining instructions. So, of course, I've mentioned this before, but people not being able to get into the virtual event is really the main barrier for engagement. If they can't technically join your event or get into it, or having technical difficulties, or are late, they're immediately at a massive disadvantage. So providing lots of access to those instructions and technical assistance is very much key. And those technical instructions might be also just remind people that their mics must be muted or will be muted automatically, but if they needed to speak, they can, raise their hand in a virtual environment. Right, time to flip over back to you there, Matt. So let's get this going back again. 1 second. Here you are.
Okay, so we'll just have a little look at some more ideas to help make sure your training sessions are a success. So, for example, if you're moving more training to be virtual, this will be a shift for many learners who perhaps used to more face-to-face training events. So initially, trainers need to remember to welcome learners at the start of a training session. If learners aren't acknowledged at the start of a training event, it's going to be difficult to ensure people feel comfortable speaking later in the session. I don't know if you've been to any Zoom meetings recently where you've participated perhaps, but you haven't actually spoken until 15, 20 minutes into a meeting. It can feel quite sort of alienating at that point. It can become awkward if you want to get learners working on problems or answering questions. So it's really good just to let people warm up at the start of a virtual training event, to become de-alienated in a way, just to sort of become human again. Could you move to the next slide, Meredith? Thanks. For many trainers, having emotional intelligence is quite a large part of the job. Most trainers will be able to read a physical room quite quickly, and they'll be able to see if learners are feeling confused or bored. But when they first start training online, this can be quite hard for trainers to know how to read the room in the same way. For example, today, it's a little difficult to know how people are feeling about this webinar. So one way to deal with this is to encourage your learners to have their cameras on. So we communicate a lot through our facial expressions. So it's important to see each other. But if you've got a large group of learners and it's not possible to have everyone's camera on, then you could consider allowing learners to do things like raise their hands or add comments into the chat function, like we're trying to do here. And make sure there's enough opportunities for learners to ask questions to avoid people from checking out or becoming disengaged quickly. It's really important to allow different people's opinions, voices to be heard. Just the next one. In a virtual training session, it's important to ensure there's somewhere for people to share ideas. In a face-to-face training event, you might have a whiteboard or somewhere else to capture notes that arise during the session. And it's important to have somewhere you're highlighting key questions to keep a central focus. You can do this using something simple like a Google document, and there are many more novel tools available for shared spaces as well. You can also set up a glossary or a wiki on Totara, for example, to share ideas. Here's the next one. So yeah, it doesn't all have to be one-way traffic. For trainers, it's very tempting to want to control the flow of information and interaction in any training event. Training events can fall into a familiar pattern where it comes to interaction. For example, the trainer asks a question, waits for a learner to respond, and then asks another question, and waits for a different learner to respond. It's a really easy pattern to fall into, but it limits interaction. It makes the trainer a bottleneck for that interaction. Just because a trainer is now running a virtual event, it doesn't mean you can't have group work or more peer-to-peer interaction. Trainers can still get learners to work in small groups or pairs and allow them to have their own virtual meetings outside of the main event for a set period of time. This might seem a bit daunting, having group interactions for set periods of time, but this really does prevent the trainer from becoming the bottleneck for interaction. The benefits are that everyone in the session stays engaged, they feel involved, and they participate, and hopefully means they'll learn more. Next one. Also, just a point to remember that it's important to let thinking happen. So it's tempting for trainers to simply deliver training to learners. And this could mean presenting a lot of information in a virtual event. But if you've set up a blended learning environment or a flipped classroom and let learners have been already given the information, then trainers can take a slightly different role than just being a presenter. Trainers can trigger a problem or an educational goal and then sit back and allow thinking to happen. They can pose Socratic questions, for example. On a health and safety course, it could be an image of a dangerous situation, and you ask learners to point out those dangers. It can be quite difficult for trainers to be silent in a training event. But if a trainer's posed a problem or asked a question, then they need to remember it's okay to be silent for some of the session. Silence can feel quite natural in a face-to-face training event while learners are thinking. But in a virtual session, silence can feel quite different, can feel awkward. It's something that trainers need to become accustomed to. Remember, like 30 seconds or so of silence is not a long time when people are thinking. It's tempting to always want to try and fill silence with more questions or information, but silence can be really important to learning. Silence can, hopefully, be a sign that thinking's happening. And then after the session, remember it's likely that people will forget a lot of the information that's taught in a live session, so it's important to have notes that the learners can review. So a good way of bookmarking training events can be with a set of information before a training event that learners are expected to interact with, then educational problems or situations in the training event, followed by a set of training notes after the training event to help work as a reminder of the main learning objectives. That way learners are interacting with content 3 times rather than just once in a traditional training event. You may also want to provide a way to stay in touch after the session or perform some social learning. And you could use a dedicated forum on your learning platform to achieve this. It's back to you, Meredith. I think you're on mute, Meredith. Meredith? I think you've got on mute.
Yep, my screen went mad. Sorry about that. I had it on a different screen looking at the questions and I couldn't get back to it. So thank you everyone for your patience while I found that mute button. Thanks, Matt. If there are any questions for Matt, we have time at the end, or do put them in the chat now that he is back and having a look at that. During the session, as Matt says, it's important to capture things like your notes and reflections. And I want to talk a little bit about how we can capture that and have post-event activities live. So again, bear with me as I swap my screens over. Alrighty, so minimize all that chat and let you go at it. So in terms of notes and reflections, as Matt touched on, we can look at creating spaces within a Totara Learn site for learners to do that. And that might be via a personal wiki space. As you see here, I've created a wiki, which is what's set to an individual wiki. And an individual can go in and post their thoughts in there. Or you might choose to have more of a collaborative wiki where people share and create a shared document about their thoughts or ideas as a result of your virtual training event. It might be more personal, and you might allow or activate blogs at the site level and allow people to create a blog at the course level so that they can make more of a journal type thought about their experience across the course and the virtual training event as a whole. Now post-event, there's still things to do. So I suggest creating an evaluation of both the content and your presentation. It's always important to learn and grow. There's always better ways and worse ways of presenting. So creating a feedback activity, using the feedback activity, creating an evaluation. And you can collect those results, ask a range of questions, and there's conditional questions which are available within the feedback activity. Now, you might also want to issue badges, maybe as a result of completing the seminar activity or as in attending it. It may be based on another activity such as the post-assessment quiz that you might create, and or you might choose to issue a badge manually based on the contributions of the individuals during the session. So maybe someone who was being very constructive, helping others, being very responsive and helpful to other people during the event, if they were in chat or allowed to speak, you may wish to award them a badge for acknowledging those soft skills that they demonstrated during the event. Now, of course, I've touched on this just before, but there is also the option of adding more of an assessment type feel, so a post-assessment quiz. So in being able to maybe repeat the questions that you had in the pre-assessment and see how people have grown, what knowledge they've taken on as a result of the training, and maybe even adjusting the content of that training as a result of those quiz results. You may also want to stimulate ongoing discussion about what was covered, so maybe creating a forum post for ongoing discussion. Here in this case, I've only allow access to that discussion after they have been marked as attending that seminar event, that virtual learning event. And of course, there's other collaborative group-based activities. Matt touched on this in terms of maybe creating a glossary for a shared understanding of any terms or technical items that were covered in the event, or even using the database tool. And I should say both of those tools can be kind of complicated to set up and use initially, and there are 2 really great Academy courses available for you on both of those activities if you want to master those more advanced activity types within Totara. So, that seemed to switch nicely. So in terms of additional resources, I just mentioned those Academy courses and the seminar certifications, the courses and certifications in this particular seminar course, which covers all the things that I mentioned around those settings, rooms, creating custom fields. And Matt wrote a fantastic blog not long ago, Top Tips for Hosting Online Training Sessions, which you can find on the website under the blog. It's one of the most recent posts there, so it should be easy to find. It's very much worth a read. So what did we get to? 16 minutes, brilliant. Have we got any outstanding questions, Matt?
Yeah, we've got quite a few questions, and also feel free to start adding them in the chat now and we'll start answering them. I'm just going to put in the link for the Academy here.
Okay.
So first question, can the trainers be managed with seminar functionalities? The only way that I know of is creating the list of trainers separately. Is there a way of managing the trainers who are assigned the role of editing trainers and trainers automatically?
I guess there's 2 questions in there for me, or at least maybe I just choose to give 2 answers to that. So in terms of automatically assigning people, you may wish to, if you've got trainers on certain subjects, I would recommend that you give them editing trainer rights at the category level and grouping all those courses together so they automatically have trainer level or editing trainer rights for all courses that are applicable to them, whether they go on to train it or not. I don't think any trainer is going to volunteer to do any training if they're not getting paid for it or assigned to it. So I think the risk of accidentally starting a virtual event and not being the trainer is very low. The other answer I want to give to that is around management in terms of calendar management and associating a trainer to an event. Now, currently within Totara 12, you can create trainers as assets and link them to a seminar event so that you can see maybe where they're located if it's a face-to-face event sometime in the future, or maybe for their area of expertise, you can select the right trainer and associate them with that event. In Totara 13, which is our next release, facilitators or trainers are going to be a completely separate entity, and we can tie those facilitators to a calendar and manage those trainers in a more robust way in terms of associating them with events and linking them to the calendars. And associating with events, which will then in turn provide them the right level of access to that course. So yeah, one question, two answers, whether you wanted them or not.
Another question. From what you're showing here, it appears it will be a two-step sign-up process, i.e. learners will book, then they have to register for the seminar, which would need to either use a knowing to go to the room link and register, or manually upload to Zoom, etc. Is there a way to add user variables to the URL to register them automatically? For example,
That is a good question. Not currently, no. There are integrations rather than just links to external web conferencing tools. There some partners have done that. So there is an open source integration with Big Blue Button, an open source web conferencing tool, which you can probably get your hands on and works with Totara. But that kind of closer integration is something that was very much on the roadmap for Totara.
Okay, another question. Can people subscribe in the webinar directly from an invitation or website, for example, without signing up in the course itself?
Yes, so kind of, not via necessarily an invitation, but there is an enrollment plugin called the Seminar Direct Link, I think it's called. And if you have that enabled at the site level, then you can enable that at the course level. And what that means is if you go into and register for that event, maybe through the calendar or via the catalogue, you can click onto a course and then register for the event, then they are automatically enrolled in that course. So particularly if you have the best way of doing it is basically displaying it on a calendar and allowing people to register via that calendar, then they'll be automatically enrolled in that course.
Okay, we're coming towards the end of questions, so just got maybe one or two more. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to start adding them now before we start.
And questions for Matt too. Get in there.
No, so we need technical answers. You talked about, so Rohit says, by managing trainers, I mean the way we manage rooms and equipment assets. I don't want to create trainers as an asset. I want the system to automatically convert the users with trainers' roles as a seminar asset. Whenever we assign a trainer to a session, we notice this trainer is already booked or not.
Right. Okay. Well, in that case, that's something that would require development.
I think there's you can use things like Calendly, for example. I'm not sure how you'd link that, but there's possibility to use different integrations.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? I think that is most questions.
Okay. I just needed to see a new slide that's not saying that people can't keep asking questions. Just wanted to see a bit of a variety. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today. If there's no further questions, I want to fire a question to you guys, which is, in terms of these webinars in the future, what would you like to see us as present? I say us, so myself, Matt Lineker, Jordan Nash, Matt Stokes, or any other member of the Community Academy or Totara teams. If you have an idea for a subject that you would like one of us to present, please do put it in the chat. We'd love to know what you guys want to know and what we can do to help you guys as partners and subscribers. And we'll put it together, collect any suggestions on a list and review and schedule accordingly.
I think our next session in a couple of weeks is on automation. So Jill's saying HR import, that's a good one. We can definitely look at that.
Yeah. Might be on leave that week. It's a tough subject to make interesting, but I can certainly look at it. Okay. Oh, well, thank you very much, Kevin. Appreciate your feedback. So it looks like that's it for questions. As always, we'll collate this up, put it on the community, and if there are any questions after the fact, do post them in the discussion forum. We'll be more than happy to help. Very much appreciate your time, and thank you so much for joining us. Oh, awesome as well. Thanks. Thank you, Jill. It means a lot. Okay. Well, I think we can call it a day there, Matt. What do you reckon?
Yep. It's like the final bit of an auction, isn't it? So it's like any more, for any
Any
more.
more? Going once, going twice.
The building advanced quizzes would be great as well. Yeah, hopefully people have also taken a look at some of the academy courses. I know many people will have. We do have lots of good resources available that you can learn all the time as well. So if you're waiting desperately to learn about these things, so advanced quizzes, there is a good course on advanced quizzes. We even have an interactive video where you can look at every type of question that's available in quizzes, and question banks and things like that. So do go and have a look at those academy courses as well. But yeah, we'll definitely can pencil in advanced quizzes and HR import as well.
Yeah, I think so. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day and speak to you again either next week or the week after. I'm not sure when my next one is, but then please join us again.
2 weeks, maybe.
Excellent. That's good news for me. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Okay, bye.